Hi, I'm Nick Barron, the COO at Harbor Solutions. We're a specialist data protection MSP over in the UK. We've been going now for about 8 years, and we are, I guess, slightly unique in our space that we, one, obviously specialise just purely in data protection, but two, we sell through the channel. So we're 100% channel only. Certainly when you look back at the legacy, a lot of the challenges we had were scale. Some of them just didn't scale. If you go back, we started with the usual selection of technologies you would expect sort of 8 years ago. And scale, general complexity of the systems. So they are typically bolted together. You've got databases, you've got separate servers to handle data collection, obviously all the storage vaults, etc. So they're quite complex in terms of how they go together, and it requires quite a lot of engineering time or support time from our side, and they constantly go wrong. So there's quite a lot of support involved. And then kind of more latterly, I guess, some of the challenges are just hardware. Buying anything these days is A, expensive, but B, a bit of a challenge. And we're seeing sort of extended lead times. We work a lot with Dell, and we've managed to get ours down to a pretty reasonable time frame because we buy some specific appliances. But just getting hardware is a new challenge, so it's always nice to have new opportunities. Backup or data protection really evolved over the last few years, and the sort of ransomware side of things is now really critical and key actually to almost every conversation. Rarely do we have a backup conversation these days. It quite regularly starts with around ransomware protection, and we're seeing a lot of those legacy systems are potentially very vulnerable because they are either on-prem on standard x86 hardware, typically running on Windows, so you have all the vulnerabilities you would have with a normal server in your data center, or they're appliances, but they're physical. You've got to lock ports, you've got to do all of that sort of stuff to secure them as much as possible. And look, being honest, a lot of people don't. So when we look at these systems and go in and look at customer systems, they aren't necessarily set up properly. So one of the bits that we really love about Druva is the fact that it's a SaaS app. It's all up in Amazon, and all of that is obfuscated away from both us and actually the customer, and it provides just that extra layer of sort of separation. So any ransomware attack that happens on-prem, well, it just can't permeate into the Druva cloud. I really don't think maintaining any form of status quo is a good idea, because a technology from 10 years ago, none of this stuff really was even a thought in anyone's head that this was what was required. So I think, picking a technology like Druva, picking a modern data protection platform is absolutely critical. And, data is way more critical to an organization now than it's ever been at any point, and it will continue to increase in its complexity. It will find its way, we were just talking as we're coming in, find its way into places you never knew you had data, and in platforms that you never knew you used. And the real need to protect it all is so important. Harbor being a specialist sort of data MSP, we get pulled into some fairly interesting challenges with our customers. Actually one we used back end of last year, which was one of our sort of first larger scale Druva deployments. We got brought in because the provider that they were using was potentially going bust. They didn't have any backups at all, and they didn't have any of their data outside of that environment. And the environment itself had been sort of built over the last 10 years, so there's been a lot of data that had been put in there and manipulated around as they went through. So it was quite difficult to actually get your hands on it and rebuild it, for instance, which would have been the obvious thing. So we needed to be able to deploy infrastructure into that environment, and it was also an MSP that was providing an IaaS platform effectively. So we couldn't just rock up there with physical appliances very easily. A lot of the sort of things you might think, we'll just sort of go and buy a storage array and copy all the data off or whatever it was. We just didn't have the ability to do, because we had to work in the constraints of effectively a cloud environment. So we were able to roll Druva out within a matter of days. In fact, it took way longer to get ports and so forth opened up via the security team than it did to deploy Druva. And then we were able to back up about 100 terabytes of front-end data within really 2 weeks, pretty much from start to finish. So, it really sort of spoke to, one, the slightly complex nature of some of these environments we get dragged into, but two, the simplicity that and speed that Druva brought to the party. And I think as we've gone about over the last 12, 18 months, what we've seen as our expectations on Druva have grown significantly, actually, right? We don't really just see you as a low-end product anymore, or a low-end use case, effectively, for a few terabytes. As I said, we've got customers with 100 odd terabytes of data we're now protecting with Druva, and we've kind of seen it as, and I mean this in a very sincere and good way, it's as good as any of the other technologies, those enterprise technologies out there. And that's great, because it gives us that scale, it gives us that ability to use the right product at the right time, particularly for distributed environments. I don't think there's a better product out there.